This special episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by Red Sky Morning, the seventh novel in the James Reese Terminal List series. It is coming in hot on May 14th in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. Go to officialjackcarr.com to pre-order your copy today. Welcome to the Danger Close podcast. For those of you who have listened to past episodes, you might recognize that this is a different background, and that's because I'm bringing all production in-house for season 4. And the actual podcast studio is getting a revamp right now, getting a remodel out there. So in the meantime, I'll be doing podcasts from my library right here, and this is where I write the novels. And my first guest for season 4 is my buddy, Mark Green, former SEAL teammate, dear friend. And man, thank you so much for taking the time. He has a new book out called Unsealed. By the time this podcast drops, it'll be out, comes out January 22nd. And the Mark Green with an E at the end.com. People can go there as well. But Mark, thank you so much for taking the time today, man.
Thanks for having me, Jack. It's been way too long, and I'm excited. The last time we saw each other was when out in Hollywood.
I remember dinner with Chris Pratt and me, you, Mark Owen, Jared Shaw, Kat from Antoine.
Yeah.
And we had a great dinner there. And I was trying to remember what year that was. Was it 2018 or 2019?
2018.
2018.
Yeah.
Man. And you were doing stuff were you at USC or were you doing
I was
stuff?
at USC, yeah. So I came out to USC in 2016 and ended up coming back east in 2020. But the 4 years I was out there was just an absolute blast.
No kidding. What were you doing? What were you doing out there? Were you doing a program? Were you getting a master's or PhD? What were you doing out there?
So I started off, so out of retirement, I got hired at USC, and I was doing fundraising, which I was terrible at. But then one day my boss was like, "Look, Mark, we got to get you out of here. Where do you want to work?" And I was like, "Well, I really want to work with veterans." And so he switched me the next day. And so the new guy I worked with said, "Mark, we don't have enough work for you. So just go find stuff to do." So, Jack, I got in with athletics. I got in with the thoracic surgeon. I got in with the business school. I was doing speaking events. I was doing fundraisers. I was just all over that place, and it was a blast.
Nice.
An absolute blast.
Man, that is wild. But leading up to that, so I got to read Unsealed. So we've known each other since January of 1997. I think that's when we classed up with PTRR in Bud. So, and you were a mineman. So you went to boot camp, and then you went to, I don't remember really anybody's rates. I remember yours, I remember Happy's, and I remember a couple of people's, but not many, because you're not working in your rate for those listening.
Right,
it's like
right.
MOS, a military specialty. So back then they used to think that you'd go get this military specialty after boot camp for a few months, and then you'd fail out of buds and go to the fleet in that specialty.
Right.
I think you're the only mineman that I ever knew in the teams before they switched over to the actual SEAL special operator rating.
I think I was the only one, because I went down to A school in Ingleside, Texas, and took the test, and I got on board a minesweeper. And I was so tall, I kept bumping my head. And then they're like, "Hey, here's your rack. Go ahead and pop in your rack." And I was a little sardine in there. And at that moment, I said, no matter what's on its way at Buds, I will never, ever be on another ship voluntarily.
No way. So as part of that, did you get underway, or was this just kind of like a training?
Whoa, Jack. I mean, come on.
I know. How many days of sea time do you have?
I don't know, but I got my shell back on the Germantown.
What?
Yes.
Oh man, I think I have a full 9 days out of 20 years of sea time. I think that's what my last little LES said before they went to
digital, right?
And then I never looked at it ever again. We used to get physical ones, and you could see it, and then I never looked at. I don't even know passwords. Like it's ridiculous. Yeah. I think I have 9 days, because they didn't count all the shipboarding we did after September 11th for some reason, because it wasn't like consecutive days or something. You'd come back, and then you go to the ship, do your op, and then sometimes you'd come back and not stay at the night. So you just like kind of base off there, and then so I don't think those counted. So I think it was really from pre-September 11th when we spent a couple days on. Oh gosh, I forget the name of the ship, but anyway, I think it was 9 days. But did you have actual? So you had actual sea time?
Yeah. So we did a exercise on board a carrier, which was my first near-death experience. And then right after September 11th, we steamed down on the Germantown to Jakarta, and whatever steaming days to and from. So I think I might have 30 days.
30.
I think so. Yeah.
Impressive for a SEAL.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, that's whew, that salty.
No,
Salty. Speaking of salty, I ran into him from our Buds class in the airport about a week ago, and he looks exactly the same as Buds, exactly the same as Team Five. And I never know whether to use people's full names. I don't know if they're contracting or whatever,
yeah. Yeah.
stuff or whatever. But so Salty S, we'll call him, and exactly the same. And remember, we used to call him Salty because we thought he was
Yeah.
so. He came from like 8 months in the fleet or something.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're listening to this, man, I apologize. It was probably like a year or two, but we're pretty much everybody's like the same age, but he looked older. He looks exactly the same. So that means he looks very young right now. And it was so awesome to see him just randomly in the airport. I would have recognized him anywhere, and got big hugs and awesome dude. But yeah, 30 days of sea time. That's pretty serious.
I saw the Ayatollah. Last name rhymes with
Yeah,
Ayatollah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was down in Nashville, and I just happened to text him,
Nice.
and he said, "Where are you right now?" I was like, "I'm in Nashville." He's like, "I live in Nashville." So hopped in an Uber and went to the house and had dinner, and it was exactly the same.
Perfect. I heard he was out there. He's doing stuff with Tomahawk guys, I think. Is that
I
right?
think so. Yeah.
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 Oh man, that's awesome. No, good memories. But 1997. So Mindman School was how long? How long did you have to do that? Was it, and did you pick it, or did you just did they suggest it? Did you get voluntold?
Well, so I was going to, you have all the source ratings, right? But I didn't actually want to deploy. So it was one of the few that like, hey, just to sweeten the deal, Mindmen don't deploy.
What? Is that
Yeah.
true?
Well, I mean, they didn't.
That's
Well, it ended up not being true. So I got down there and they said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to start deploying again." I was just like, "Oh, yeah, we're not doing that." So I went to the A school. I think it was like September to December.
okay, so pretty long.
Yeah, it was a pretty good long course. And then I knew I wasn't going to quit anyway, but I mean, it solidified
You weren't Mindman material.
at all, at all. I was anti-Mindman. So the boats are made out of wood, and it's just God bless those guys who do it and do it for a career. But I just knew it wasn't for me. So when we showed up in '97, I was outside the pit, and remember they set us in the pit.
What was the pit? Is that
So it was right outside of medical. Those bleachers right outside of medical.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It was me and Ryan.
Okay.
Ryan was the first one I met, and from Louisiana, and he's the slowest talker I'd ever seen in my life.
Such a great guy, right?
Yeah.
We'll call him, because once again, I think he's just getting out. I think because he stayed reserves, and we got in touch a little while ago, and then when you hear guys like when we came in and guys had Vietnam experience, a lot of them had taken a little break sometime in like 70s or 80s and come back in, a lot of those guys. So I think he did something like that. I'm not positive, but we went to A school together. Ours was long too. Ours was we went to intelligence training school together, or whatever, Nimitzi, Dam Neck, Virginia, and that was from August, I think, to December. So it was a long one as well.
So you were kind of salty yourself. You had been in the Navy for.
I did a lot of mopping at the Naval Intelligence Training Center. In the mornings, I would mop the bottom floor. Then I would go to lunch and I'd come back and mop the top floor while I was waiting to class up. So I got pretty good at mopping. And the bottom floor was enlisted. The top floor was the officer intelligence school, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so you were swabbing deck, huh?
Yeah, me and Ryan and OB, we'll call him. And I know he's out there with a business down in Florida, but he still likes to be a little private. So I will just call him. Awesome dudes. We had such a great time together.
We had a really great class, and we were really tight. And I remember the first time I actually met you was week 3. It's just a scrum of humanity in the first couple weeks.
200 some people, I think.
Yeah. And we were getting ready to go on a 4-mile timed run, and you walk up and said, "Hey, I'll see you at the end of this thing. I'll cheer you on at the end." I was just like, "Who is this guy?"
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, yes, you did. Because I kind of talked a lot of smack in class.
I was responding to something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
rising to the occasion.
Right. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know who this guy is, but okay. So you took off, and I was like, who is this guy? And then at the end, it's like, yeah, he used to run cross country, because you just absolutely smoked me. and I think you waved to me on the way back.
Nice, nice. I wouldn't have done that. I don't think unless provocated, but
I was probably in charge of the provocation ops on that one. So
oh, man, that's one thing I had going for me in buds was the running, and I think a lot of it came from running hills, just growing up kind of in the hills and mountains and running hills. I think that really helped. Swimming, not so much. Swimming, I felt like I was an okay swimmer, and then this combat side stroke. And remember when we did it, they didn't teach you; they just threw you. Yeah, now they
yeah.
teach. Now they teach them this stroke and they teach them all the technique and all that stuff. And yeah, us, they did not teach at all. They maybe said something like just kind of turn on your side, do a little flutter kick with your feet and stay underwater, bring your head up, do a side stroke with your upper body. Good luck.
And don't suck. Yeah,
That was rough. I
that
remember.
was it.
But
So
yeah, but how did, so that was the first time you met me. That's crazy. I don't remember.
I had seen you, but there were so many of us, like 160 to 180 of us.
Okay.
And you don't get to know anybody really. You just kind of your boat crew and then just everybody else. And then the class started to whittle down and here you and I stood face to face and I was talking smack and you're like, yeah, I'll see you at the end. I was like,
Oh man. Well, I wouldn't have said that probably at that stage for the O course, although I did get really good at it after we learned the technique. I remember the first time on the O course. And I remember instructor, once again, we'll say last name G, huge guy.
oh yeah.
I'm talking about. And so coming down that slide for life at the end, reaching up like week one, first time, just reaching out. And I was on it. He reaches up as I'm getting close and he grabs me by the t-shirt and just pulls me down. His body slams me into the sand, but very quickly you learn the technique for that thing. So I very quickly I got fast at that. But the swims were, man, those were tough.
Myself and Jason Lewis were we were swim buddies and we got together week 2. So Jason could swim fast, but he was all over the place. And for some reason, yeah, but for some reason I could look down at that palm tree and I could swim a straight line for a mile. So Jason is doing this, right? And I'm just swimming straight. So I'm guiding and he's pacing. So together we made one good swimmer. And we just stayed together for all 3 phases. But I was not knocking it out of the water swimming either. But so we made it.
Yeah. I didn't realize you were with Jason the whole time.
Yep.
Oh man, who sadly passed away in Iraq.
And I saw him right before he deployed. I think I was getting ready to because what year was that?
I want to say that it was, and everything's kind of conflated in my mind, 2007. Is that right?
Okay, because I saw him right before I went to NPS, Naval Postgraduate School. And I was like, dude, we got to get back together and catch up. He's like, oh, I'll be back after this deployment. I'll be back in Virginia. And, unfortunately, he never came back and just heartbroken because, you spent hours, thousands of hours with that swim buddy and, and then you reconnect and he looked great and he had taken some time off and was coming back in and he was just excited to be back in and then he left and I got the news and just one of those heartbreaking moments.
Yeah.
Of many that we've endured over the years.
Yeah. And we'll talk about another one a little bit later. Actually, anyway, yeah, you were with them the whole time. That's unusual. So I had different swim buddies in PTRR. And then once we got to first phase, though, I think I could say last name. I could say Kylan, I think. Anyway,
yeah.
I was with him the whole time. So after that, once we paired up together, then we were together the whole time. And gosh, I was so lucky to have him as a swim buddy because he could guide. And so I essentially would just kick. I was not good at guiding. They tell you to line 2 things up on the shore. So I don't know how you're one palm tree, but you're trying to like line 2 things up. And for people listening or watching, it's what is it? How many nautical mile ocean swim? 2 nautical mile?
2 nautical miles. Yep.
But you can make that 3 nautical miles by doing this.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
So I think I swam, but none of my 2 nautical mile ocean swims were actually 2 nautical miles. So I think I was definitely putting in some 3 nautical mile swims early on, maybe even 4, until I got paired up with Kylan, and that he was really good at guiding. And
Yeah.
we switched off a couple times, but we very quickly would switch back to him doing that. That's if memory serves anyway. So I was with him for almost all of Buds once we linked up together.
Yeah. So, and Jason and I, same way. We got together, switched out swim buddies for the first couple weeks of first phase, and then
Mhm.
2 people were left, and we kind of looked at each other like, "Are we doing this?" And it's like, "Yeah." And we were a great match. And I would run into the safety boat. That's how straight I could swim.
They did that on purpose, though. They would.
No, they didn't. I was that good.
I mean, did you ever run into the kayaks though, or do they let you go? So,
No, I ran into the buoy.
oh, the buoy. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Buoy, gotcha. Like the boat. I was talking about safety kayaks, because the safety kayaks, those guys, you're going along and you're like, you're feeling good, and you're like, oh, this is a good one right here. And then all of a sudden, your head bunk into some yellow kayak because they paddled in your way just to mess with you. Uh, gosh. So they did that quite frequently. I remember us hitting those guys, most every swim. Anyway, you bash your head in, you pick your head up, they laugh at you, and then you got to kind of get going again because now you've lost that momentum.
That momentum, yeah, yeah.
Can't really get away with doing that on a run, like pushing you over on a time run, but they can just paddle those safety kayaks right in front of you. And
Just a little bit. Yep, yep. So, but I mean, it was a great experience, and I learned a lot about teamwork and camaraderie, and just when the guys who survived Hell Week, those were your lifelong buddies, because whittled them out, and then we got lucky and all went to team. So many of us went to Team 5, and just continued, and it was just um, an awesome experience.
yeah, we did have a great crew. And did you start first phase in Boat Crew 1 or Hell Week in Boat Crew 1, or both?
No, started first phase 6-2. I was part of the 6-2 crew, so it was me, Tim, Mikey, Baldwin, Alford. I think Tucker was in there, but I don't know how I remember all these names. And Shuck, I think Shuck.
That's about earlier.
Yeah. So I think that rounded out the crew. So we stayed together all the way up until Hell Week, and then Alford and one of the other guys, Baldwin, first two gone.
Surprising, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest surprise. So the thing was, they were both on my arm, one on one side, one on the other. Yeah,
Like, it must have been like 45 minutes in, right?
right. Yeah, yeah,
Because I joined you very quickly.
very quickly. Yeah,
And it's because those guys quit right
Yeah.
away. And I
yeah,
think one of them had been there, both of them had been there in previous classes, right?
yeah. Baldwin had gone pretty deep with 210, but had to start all over again
Yeah.
with our class, and then just that cold. I mean, great dude. I just the cold. I think it just got to him. He'd had enough.
Yeah. And since you brought him up, Alfred was pretty loud. And I remember seeing him. He was big. Remember how big
Yeah.
he was strong. Like, I remember showing up and thinking, oh my goodness, you have to be this big to make it through this program. Like, this guy
Yeah.
looked like a monster.
Yep.
And then, 45 minutes in, I think both of them were gone. I think by that point I was in 2. I think I started, because I'm 6 foot. And I think I started in Boat Crew 3. We had some big boys in the larger class before it got.
Mhm.
So I think I started in 3, started Hell Week in 2 because people were quitting up until Hell Week. And then 45 minutes into Hell Week, I was in 1 with you. And then we
Yeah.
stayed there the whole rest of the time in Boat Crew 1. And Boat Crew 1, that's the deal, I think. I like being Boat Crew 1.
Yeah, yeah, it was a good group of guys, big, strong guys, and
I mean, I think in general, meaning some of those big monster instructors, like they like Boat Crew 1, I think.
yeah,
I think the Smurf crew, that's not the place to be. The Smurf Boat Crew, I think that's just, I mean, for whatever reason, you're running like twice as far as everybody else, first off.
everybody else, yeah.
But I think you just take a little more heat, I want to say. I think
Yeah,
it's
I mean, yeah, I mean, Buds is a strength course, and the instructors love these big, strong dudes who just run the show. And
you just perform, but when you win a race, when you're
Yeah.
racing the whole week, so when you win something and get to sit down for your 2 minutes or whatever they give you,
Yeah.
then I they like it. You could tell that when Boat Crew One wins something, they're like, "That's right." You know, I got that sense anyway. I don't know, but or it might change by class. Who knows? But that was my sense. But what are your memories of us in Hell Week? Because I don't remember boot camp at all. I don't remember OCS at all because they're pretty much exactly the same thing.
Right.
I put that in the part of my memory that was just a waste. So I don't remember them at all. And anybody wondering, you're just getting yelled at by Marines at officer candidate school, and you're getting
Yep.
yelled at by Navy people at boot camp.
Yeah.
Yelled at, you're still making your bed, folding t-shirts and underwear, and that's sort of
Skinny, fat, skinny.
attention to detail. Attention to detail.
So
Yeah.
Hell Week, I remember that we didn't have a breakout. They just said, start rock portage. So we're waiting for the extravaganza that you see on TV and movies and stuff. And they just like, okay, just show up. And Diatley was our proctor, who I think beat us more than anybody else.
Yeah. They did not like us.
No. And two individuals in particular they didn't like.
Oh yeah.
We got the brunt of it.
Happened to be the class leaders, right?
Yeah. I remember that a lot. And then
oh my gosh.
we just started, and then it was game on, and I was just a nervous wreck, starting off.
I don't remember you being nervous. I just remember us going through, linking arms, going into the surf, and I don't remember you being nervous though.
Well, so I mean, internally, I was like, "This is it," and this is the crucible. So if my NSW career starts or ends with this. I never thought I was going to quit. I just was like, I've never stayed up for a week before. And I remember them putting us down to sleep for the first time on Tuesday.
Wednesday.
Was it Wednesday? I talked to Salty, and we're going back and forth.
Wednesday.
So I said Wednesday, and I thought it was Wednesday. So I go to sleep, and I remember being hypothermic and jackhammering, right? And then finally settling down from the jackhammer. Then it's like, man, I gotta go pee, and then hit the surf, start shivering again. So this vicious cycle of shivering, peeing, going out to pee, and then coming back and just being miserable. So I finally stopped shivering. I finally stopped peeing, and I finally fell asleep. And then shift change happened. And I'm like, get everybody up. And I was locked in the fetal position, and you and Thompson grabbed me up and took me out to the surf in the fetal position and unceremoniously just dumped me in the water.
I do not remember that, but it sounds about right.
Yeah. And then I said, I'm never sleeping again. So when they put us down the night after, I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I just stayed awake.
Did you?
And yeah.
That's tough because some people fall asleep right away. So people listening, Wednesday, so you've been up since Sunday morning,
Mhm.
get 2 hours, not of sleep necessarily, because if you go to sleep right away, and it's not like you're going back to your barracks, you're in this tent on the beach with each tent probably has 20 guys in it or something like that.
Oh, awful.
It's disgusting. I mean, because you have this sick, nasty sweat, breath, everything else. There's no ventilation, and it turns into this just humid mess of who knows what. Like patient zero type stuff. Like it is nasty. And then so you can close your eyes right away and go right into like REM sleep. But it feels like if you got those 2 hours, then they come in, start yelling and doing whatever they're doing and put you right in the surf zone. It feels like you got zero. It's
Right.
the worst part. It would be better, I think, to just not sleep.
Yeah.
Some people go to medical, get checked out, and then they come back an hour later. So maybe they get an hour or half an hour. And some guys like you, they don't sleep at all, just anticipating the wake up. So it's really interesting to get sleep and who doesn't in that Wednesday, Thursday timeframe.
And then on Thursday, we're doing around the world, and we were not doing well. And the Smurfs were beating us, and Gecko was like, he's like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So he said, if you guys win this, you guys get to go to sleep. So then we're just like, okay, that makes sense. So we're going through the surf, and I remember I started hallucinating, and there was this brick wall out there. I was like, that's so weird. There's a brick wall. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was like, wow, that's weird. There's a brick wall out here. Didn't think anything of it. And Big Tim grabs his oar and just launches it and said, everybody drop your oars, or snakes.
I don't remember that. I feel like I should.
And then a little bit later, I see a chain link fence out in the middle of the ocean and thought again, I was like, chain link fences out here. That's so weird. But it was actually a wave. And then it just dumped because we had drifted too far into the surf and dumped us all in the water. And then we're like, enough. So we end up winning around the world. And I took a heat injury early on. So Getka said,
On Thursday or on?
no, this was in PTRR.
Okay.
So I took a heat injury, and Getka's like, every time I see you, you're going to be hydrated inside and out, which means dump your canteen, drink your canteen, and go get wet. So we're finishing up around the world, and we win. And Getka's, I hear green, and me and Tim Thompson are already snuggled up, right? And they yell, green, get out here. And I knew it was Getka, and I knew it was coming. So I run up there, and he's like, go get wet. And it was a Return of the Jedi moment where I'm looking at the water, looking at Gekka, water one more time, and said, absolutely not. Okay. And then I threw a fit, stomping my feet. You told me that we get to sleep, and God damn it, I'm going to sleep. So Leif comes over and said, what in the hell is going on over here? And Mike said, hey, he's not going to get wet. He told me he's not getting wet. So I told Leif the story again, threw another fit. And he looks at Mike and said, well, Mike, is that what you told him? He's like, yeah, Chief, that's what I told him. He's like, well, we keep our word around here. Green, go to sleep. And I yelled to Tim, I was like, Timmy, I'm on my way back. And that was he was 6'4", 240 pounds of just heat. And we were snuggled up.
No way.
Yeah, for the rest of the time. So we got to sleep until the last Poku came in.
Did I too? Was I there too?
Yeah.
Dang, all I remember about Around the World, I remember the brick wall. I saw a warehouse and I saw Poseidon coming up out of the water. I don't remember the snakes, but I do remember the class either ahead or the ones that were in that medical or whatever, swimming out and giving us candy in Ziploc bags.
Yes.
I remember chowing down on some candy out there. I think why we got behind is probably because we got this bag of candy and we started. So I do remember that Thursday night. And gosh, I remember the earlier days. I remember the Steel Pier. I remember everybody quitting the first few hours, and then just staying moving, fun and games in the pool. All that's just keeping you awake, doing all that stuff. So but I remember we had a solid crew.
Yeah. And instructor John, remember if you fell asleep, you'd have to eat a jalapeno?
Oh yeah, I don't think they're allowed to do that anymore.
Oh, they're not? Okay. If anybody's watching, they didn't do that back then.
They're not allowed to do anymore, I don't think.
So I remember we're in the chow hall, and I'm thinking, it's like, okay, I'm tired, but don't fall asleep because you don't want that jalapeno. And somehow I fell asleep, and I don't even know for how long, but all of a sudden I realized I was asleep, popped my my eyes open, and there's John with a big jalapeno just right in front of my face. I was like,
did you eat it?
Oh yeah.
Oh man. Well, I saw Getka in a photo not too long ago. John Doolittle, and we can say his name. He's out there. He has a great company and awesome dude. So John Doolittle was hanging out with him not too long ago and sent me.
Good. Yeah, Mike's a good dude, man. He's tough as nails, but just a genuinely good dude.
So tough. All those guys was fantastic, man. And so then we went. So Hell Week secured from Hell Week, awesome. And then you stayed on with 212 all the way, right?
Yeah.
And pool comp, no issues. Pool comp is the next phase.
So I mean, I got it on my third try.
That's still pretty much no problem.
Yeah.
So tries or something.
Yeah, you get 4 tries, and I missed my first 2. The first one I'd gotten all the way to the end, and I thought I had the whammy knot, so I just like crushed it. So I go up to the top, and one of the instructors was like, "Hey, take a breath on your regulator," and he had only tied up the exhalation knot. So that was a fail, and that kind of threw me off my game, and I didn't do well the second one, but finished the third one, and then it was good to go after that. But nice. Losing you guys, because you left right after, was it after Hell Week?
I think it was. So we got walk week after that to kind of heal up. So you're walking and you get tennis shoes instead of boots for that next week as you kind of heal up. And then we started again, and then I had some leg issue, and I still made it through the runs, like still just limping, but I was still
Mhm.
fairly fast, but it was painful, but that's fine. And then, but the swim, got in the swim and started
Yeah.
going, whatever my leg, my foot wouldn't, whatever that's called, whatever that, anyway,
Legs and yeah.
I couldn't kick. And so
Ah,
that big instructor who pulled me off the slide for life came up in the boat in the Zodiac and was like, let's, and because I got a medical during walk week for it. And they gave
mm,
me like a no, like you can't swim shit or you can't run shit, but I was still
yeah,
running. I didn't show the instructor, so I got the chit, but I didn't want to remember you're so afraid of getting booted for medical that you're like
yeah,
scared to death of like something happening and you're not making it through for medical. So I was like, I'm not showing him. I'm going to keep going on this, even though I'm not supposed to be doing anything. And he's like, why? He was like, what's going on here? And he picked me up out of the water and slammed me into the Zodiac and was like, what's going on? I'm like, oh yeah, got this shit. I'm not supposed to be out here. And he's like, what? And so I was zoomed in. And then, so anyway, that was a roll. And so rolled to 213 and then finished up with them. And it was no problem. I healed up, in those couple of weeks in between classes. And it was no problem from then on out. But yeah, pool comp. I was looking forward to pool comp because I remember the only time you get to put like it's you against that instructor. Usually, you just get yelled at and
yeah,
it's just awful. But the only times you get to like go mano a mano with an instructor is first phase doing drown proofing, life saving, knot tying, and
yep,
essentially the underwater swim because it's like you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. Especially the life saving when you go out there and have to pull somebody back and
yeah,
I did jujitsu kind of early, like before MMA and all and UFC and all that stuff. And so I was kind of thinking about that, especially when the big instructor takes you to the bottom and I would just relax, do that. But I was like, oh, this is me against you. I have my hands now on an instructor.
yeah,
I mean, against the bottom, but they're exerting energy. And right now I'm just like in jujitsu when you're kind of when the other person doesn't really know what they're doing and you're wrestling or you're rolling, they're expending their energy and you're kind of just doing your thing. And so that's what I was doing there. And that's why I loved it. I loved those and I love pool comp because I thought that was the same thing. Even though you're not like fighting an instructor, you essentially are because they're diving down and they're doing all these things to you,
yeah,
ripping off gas, tying up your hose, your regulator, pulling that out of your mouth and hitting you in the stomach so you like expend your air and all that stuff. So I like that because it was like, all right, bring it,
yeah, yeah.
in the water anyway. So I really liked that part. But yeah, but a lot of people get held up like that. Other than Hell Week, pool comp is the next thing. And then essentially from that point on, if you continue to improve and not fail multiple timed events in a row and are fairly safe with explosives and firearms in third phase, like you're gonna make it.
Yeah. So yeah, and it was just, we were hated first phase, kind of hated in second phase and third phase was like, you guys are great. So and we lost more people after Hell Week than any other class. And they had to go hands off because they're like, we can't have guys who made it through Hell Week quit during Hydro Recon and
Mhm.
getting less than they did in Hell Week. So they came in and said, "All right, hands off these guys." And then, but we had been beaten so much in the first two phases that by third phase they literally couldn't hurt us. So they're like, "All right, these guys are good." And we had a great attitude, and uh, we just did the thing. But I always checked in on you and Mikey and Obi because you guys are 212 guys. So we
Yeah,
all team five together. It was awesome.
that was cool. So you get to team five. Obviously, you get there 2 or 3 months before we do because we're the next class following up. But we ended up in sister platoon. So what happened there? I forgot. Did you, did
So
you do SQ?
we had,
I forgot how that because we did SQT together also, right?
yeah. So we were wife and I were gonna have a baby, right? And she tested high for birth defects. So the command's like, okay, we're pulling you right now. Make sure your kid's okay. Um, and then that set me back. That set me back to your guys' timeline. Daughter ended up being fine, and who's now 25 and lives in Paris and just got married, and
Wow.
crushing it. But that's what set me back. And then we all just showed up at Team Five, SQT, and then Charlie in India, and just crushed it.
Yeah, man, that's why. Yeah, team five was a good time back then. We had a it was
Yeah,
September 11th time frame for those watching or listening. So we're new guys, go through SEAL qualification training, get those tridents pounded in. Do you remember our trident review board? Like that was
Oh,
serious. I
yeah.
forget that Master Chief, but like
Chamberlain,
that was no joke. Oh,
Rainbow.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, crazy. That was quite difficult.
I think it's probably the hardest test I had, and I think they just threw the hardest stuff at us, and when we didn't pass, they're just like, "Yeah, you guys suck," and they didn't really have any rhyme or reason. And some guys passed who shouldn't have, and some guys failed, and so yeah, I had to do the dive chart. I was on my last chance to do the dive chart, um, and then I passed that, and then we all got our tridents. But Murph was my LPO, and he made sure that he drove that trident home.
Oh yeah, I was surprised at how the guys that I thought were going to hit that pound that thing in super hard. It didn't
Yeah.
really feel as hard, and the guys like the littler guys didn't
Uh-huh.
do it anyway. That I thought would be like, oh, no big deal. Oh my goodness, those guys that hurt, And some guys just came up and went, boom, hey, congratulations. And then some guys were
Yeah.
like, after it. But up against the Connex boxes, and but it was what a great day. You don't even feel it. You're so
Right. Right. You're just
yeah.
happy to have your trident finally.
Oh man, after that, yeah, I like that way. I kind of think that's a cool way to do it. Now it's more professional, and now there's more of a system in place, and every team doesn't do it a little bit differently, like when we went through. But there was something about being on probation with your platoon and getting that nod from people that at the time, even pre-September 11th, that you thought you could go into combat with. So getting the nod from them at that tactical level, not looking at it from an instructor level down or whatever else, or passing a test here or there, but from your peers to your right and left, who you're going to essentially be on that front line with, or be behind the lines with, be in that foxhole with, those guys giving you the nod. There's something really cool about that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to know the members of your team and the guys who'd been there before, and to get their nod of approval, saying, "Okay, I'm willing to work with this guy. He's earned it." And it seemed more pride as opposed to now, where it's like, "Okay, you finished SQT, here you go." Like you really had to earn it, and you're on your toes, and you had to know your job, and those guys weren't going to sign off on you if you didn't make the cut. And I agree. I thought that was a much better way of doing it, and you just learned a lot.
Yeah. And also, if you're preparing yourself ahead of time back then and you're reading everything you possibly can on the SEAL teams, part of that reading that you're doing talks about being on probation with your platoon. And so that's kind of
Yep.
it's like, oh man, this is very cool. This is part of the process. This is kind of part of this crucible, if you look at it, other than Hell Week, this longer type of a crucible and acceptance into the tribe type of a thing. That was really cool and meaningful, I thought. But we went sister platoons. So for people listening, back then you had that means we'd go through a workup together, and then on deployment we'd go different places, but we're together for an entire workup cycle for 18 months or whatever it was. And then we went to different places on that deployment. But we went to Okinawa, and you guys went to Guam, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, you guys are down there and do some training trips, pre-September 11th type thing. You're always ready to go. Your job is to be prepared for war, not go to war. So we're prepared and best we can. And you think you're going to get into it. We're hearing about some things maybe happening in
Yeah.
Bosnia. We're going
Yeah.
to go there, and maybe at one shipboarding. If you do like one shipboarding on a deployment, that was a big deal back
Right.
then. And then we came home, and that's 2000. And then I got married, and then free fall. Um, Mikey's free fall.
Were you in that class too?
I was on my honeymoon, so he went to free fall, and I went to get married. So I took leave.
Oh
Um,
man.
we did
Right after
sniper
high
school,
school.
sniper school first,
Yep.
and then so he rolled right into this new free fall thing, which wasn't
Mhm.
one that I would eventually go to, that most people had gone to up until that point, which is the Army free
Right.
fall, Arizona. So this was it's a contracted private one, and kind of I think it was one of the first iterations of doing it, I believe. I'm not positive.
Yeah.
But I remember last time I saw him, I'd come back. So we did sniper school, and then I took a month of leave, got married, went on honeymoon, came back, and I remember driving in, and I remember them getting in the van to drive off. So I'm pulling into the parking lot they have the government vans
Yeah.
lined up to go, and they're the guys that are going to do that course are getting in, and then I said bye, and that's the last time I saw him.
I saw him. So the wives were close, and Holden was young, and Riley was young. So we spent a lot of time together. And he came over to my house that Sunday because he had missed a couple of days of the safety stuff, and he wasn't supposed to go, but he ended up going. And he and I just kind of had a heart to heart. He's just like, Mark, I'm so tired, dude. Been going nonstop. He's like, I'm kind of thinking about not going. And I remember saying, it's like, well, dude, just don't go. You're the golden child. You know, a billet comes up, hey Beard, you want to go. And just that's just not who Mike was. So he said, it's like, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and go. And I'll see you. We'll hang out again. I'll tell you all about it on Friday when I come home. And he had passed away, and our XO at the time pulled everybody out of the grinder and let us know what happened. And he said, "Hey, Mark, I got a job for you." And he said, "You need to go pick up his wife and his kid and take him home." And my chief at the time he said, "No, no, I'll do it." And XO was like, "Is that something that would normally happen?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "Mark and the family are, it would be a normal thing for Mark to go pick her up." So I pick her up,
She's at the
and
hospital.
yeah, she's at Balboa. Yep. So for some reason she had to go with the baby for something, and the car broke down, and I picked her up and took her home. And it was the worst experience because obviously I knew Mikey had passed, and she had no idea. And she's telling me about what they're gonna do over the weekend. Just absolutely awful. So I dropped her off, come back to the team, and then they ceremoniously have to do it the right way. Chaplain, CO, XO, and Master Chief dressed up. And I remember they showed up at her house, and her saying, "What are you guys doing here all dressed up?" And then it hit her. And everybody comes to the house, and what was the heartbreaking thing for me is when I walked in the door and she realized that I had known when I picked her up. And Jack, to this day, I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from that, because the look she gave me was like, "How could you do this to me?" And heartbroken. And I was like, and I could not say sorry enough. And um, later on, she understood that it had to be done that way, but I'm still stuck on that walking through the door and seeing her face and us locking eyes, and her eyes said absolutely everything. And that was 24 years. Wow. This is yeah, 24 years ago. It's like it's like it happened yesterday. And that was the hardest part to write in the book.
Yeah, it's the hardest
The
part in the book for me.
Mhm.
When I read it, and I got to that part, I was like, "Oh man, yeah, it was tough to read." I mean, it feels like yesterday to me.
Mhm.
And so for some reason, I think that was like that once again, I was just back from leave. So I drove home for lunch. I think I drove home for lunch, had some lunch, drove back. And remember how you could just drive on base? There was no guards.
Right, right, yeah.
So I drive in to base just through that little empty guard shack thing, and I
Yeah.
park there because it's the easier, I guess, the closest. There was a parking spot, so I pulled in, and once again, another open gate right into Team Five, always
Right.
open.
Yeah.
So I park, hop out, and going in front through the quarter deck, and I see Jason Lewis, who we talked about,
Mhm.
and Andy Stumpf, and they'd come out of the quarter deck and they were walking to their car, and I was like, they don't look, something looks off.
Mhm.
Guys, what's up? And they both turned to me and they're like, and they could tell I didn't know yet.
Yeah.
And so they both walked over and told me. And then I walked in, and things went from there, and then went over to their house a few hours later, and spent a lot of time there over the
Mhm.
next few days and all that. So I did write Mikey's son a letter because I called my dad that day, and his dad was killed in World War II. So he did never met his father. He was born
Mhm.
away. He was a fighter pilot, Corsair Marine pilot. And he always wished that he had a letter from somebody in his father's squadron who had sat down and said, "Hey, this is who your dad was." Because back then, there's no Facebook, there's no Instagram,
Right.
email, there's no reunions. How would you find out about this group of people who were in the same squadron and maybe still get together every year somewhere? Like there was no way for, well, obviously he's 1 years old then, but they say at age 10, age 15, age 20 to try to track somebody down that was in your dad's squadron. So he's like, I think it would be a good thing if you wrote a letter, just
Mhm.
ideas. I wrote a letter all about our relationship and who his dad was and everything about being together in Hell Week and all through Buds and this team, this experience. And so I wrote it out, just didn't type it. I wrote it. And then I gave it to Dorinda. And I don't know if he ever got it or not. It was just to hold on to like for one day. If he ever asks, this is
Mhm.
so yeah, that's out
And
there.
I had a similar experience with Kelsall. You remember Jonas? And after the incident back then, we were at a retirement ceremony, and they had mentioned that his parents were there. So at the end of it, I introduced myself, and I told him a story about I was having a really tough day in first phase, and normally I was pretty jovial and stuff, but Jonas looked at me and said, "Hey, dude, are you all right?" I was like, "Jonas, I am hurting today." He's like, "Okay, here's what we're gonna do." 18-year-old kid. I was 25. He's like, "Here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna run behind me. I'm going to run in a way that packs down the sand just a little bit more. Don't look up, just look at my feet and just run in my footsteps." So I did that for our run. And he was always just mischievous, and you could hear him and Flynn just giggling about something constantly. So I met his mom and dad, and I thought about, I was like, what would I want to do if I met somebody who knew my son? So I just sat down with them and told them 2 hours of stories about their son, you know, and his dad at the end of it thanked me. He's like, "Thank you. It was just great to hear about my son." And I told him about that mischievous laugh he had, and just both his parents just lit up because they knew that laugh well. And I was really happy to get that moment with them. I wish I would have written it down, but to tell the parents about their son and the impact that their son had and how great of a young man he was, I think that is, I want to say, one of the best things I've done in the teams. It was just, hey, here's you may not know about this about your son, and if you got some time, I'd love to tell you every story I know about him. And it was great. So
Oh man. And Jonas and Flynn no longer with us.
yeah,
Oh man, yeah. So in that show, SEAL Team CBS, they talk about having numbers in your phone, and I still have all those guys' numbers in the phone. And sometimes when I'm typing, like looking for somebody else in contacts or whatever,
yeah,
type in like the first couple letters or the first numbers, and then those numbers still.
yeah.
So I have lots of them. It's just what we all do. I think most people are to keep those numbers in their phone. It just seems weird to delete them or whatever.
Yeah, it seems like that's the one piece we still have of them.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, man, that was tough. That was like our first military experience
Yeah,
with
losing
that.
somebody.
Yeah, someone who's super close, obviously.
Right.
And Salty close with too. And what does the military do in their infinite wisdom? What does the team do? They send me and Salty to free fall school the next week.
The
Yeah.
next week?
Well, we go through that week of
Yeah, yeah.
and the whole. So we went. So we did the memorial in Coronado. We
Yep.
to Texas for the
Mhm.
funeral. So we did that.
Yep.
We went from there to free fall.
Ooh.
We didn't come back. We went directly from the next day, maybe even that night. I can't remember. Salty will remember. Yeah,
What
because
was that like jumping out though?
it
Because
was
I'll
not
tell you
great.
about mine.
It was not great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So both of us we're all part of this crew, me, you, Salty, Ryan, Obi, all of us were just so tight. And then they sent us to free fall. And now looking back, I'm like, okay, got it. Great. I didn't get to stew on it. At the time, I'm like, what? And so we went to North Carolina first, went to Bragg because that's where they had one of the only wind tunnels, I guess, at the time.
Yeah.
So we get the wind tunnel there. And of course, I'm all over the place. The wind tunnel, it's like, what do they call it? Dirty air and whatever you're in there. You're just going
Yeah.
inside. I'm like, oh my Lord. But it was cool being in North Carolina and being at Bragg, haven't heard of it. No, all the movies growing up and all the books
Right.
about Bragg. And so it was really cool to be there. I really enjoyed being there. But then off we go to Yuma, out to Yuma. And I don't think the jumping wasn't, because you're in that, you're going.
Right.
You're going out that with the plane. For me, it was mostly the packing, because you're learning to pack, and as I'm packing the chute, you have some time,
Right.
and thinking through everything. So that part, not great. But jumping out, I was comfortable. It was different than being in the wind tunnel. So I was pretty comfortable in the air, even in my first jumps. You're wobbly and you're a little trashy on that first jump or maybe, but I didn't have any problems with anything, any points of performance or anything like that. But then final jump, 2 guys die.
What?
Night combat equipment, oxygen, and an instructor and a student hit each other, hit heads.
I remember that.
And so we're on the ground and we have to find the bodies. So this was, 4 weeks after, but anyway, so we have to do that. And then they have a safety stand down. It's because we're still 1 jump away from graduating. That's the full night combat equipment, whole thing. Go, I think that was it. 1 or 2 more to go. But we have to do the safety stand down while they do the investigation. So now we're just waiting. So we're just sitting there, stewing, waiting to go do this and we had the memorial for the guys at Yuma. We did a ceremony, everything for them there. And then we had to wait. Investigation was over. I think it only was maybe a week and a half, or it seems like 10 days, 2 weeks, maybe something like that. But then we did our final jump, maybe our final 2, and that was it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Years later, I was an officer, and I do my OIC at Boat Team 20, and it was a part of NCADS, and we had to go. And I had put off free fall for years, and they're like, "Hey, Mark, you're the OIC of an NCADS. That guess where you're going?" I was like, "I'm not going free fall. And I know for damn sure that's not what I'm doing." And so I went to free fall, and it was the same course. They had fixed it, but it was
a contracted course. It was not.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Jack, the first time I jumped out, I was like, well, this is it. Because the last thing that kept me from going to free fall was just the memory of losing my best friend. And so I jumped out, and the first time, like, I didn't pass the first course because we didn't have a wind tunnel. They just said show up and don't suck. And so failed the first time, went back out 2 weeks later, did the tunnel stuff, and then it was fine. So but each time, all the jumps I did, I still every time packed my chute, like you said. This could be the last one. Could be the last.
Jeez. How about doing static line? Did you have to do static lines over the years though?
Lawn darting, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those once again, you're going. I mean, you're in the thing. It's night or day, whatever. You're hooked up and out you go, just like in World War II. Not much difference.
Oh,
And
awful.
and doing it. And people get injured doing that all the time. I mean, just landing on oh, gosh, Kevin Kent, man, Kevin, who I saw last May at our friend Matt H. I'll call him Matt H because I don't know if he's going to do some contracting or not, but fantastic, amazing guy, my troop chief at the end of my time in the teams, and he retired last May, so I got to see Kevin out there, and man, he came down at night we were together jumping into Fort Lewis, our first platoon. So when we were sister
Oh, I remember that.
came down and like I think he went into a pothole. So coming like his one leg went into like this hole, but his body kept moving. You're coming down pretty good, especially at night.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I remember it being cold and windy and all, and and just like snapped something in his knee, like going the wrong direction, like not great. So yeah, that's
Um,
yeah.
on that same jump, no, we were jumping at Pendleton, and I think we were practicing for Fort Lewis FTX or something like that. So we land and we store all our gear, right? And then put my knee down. We're circling up and all that, and then I'm like, man, this is a really soft spot. Not a nice soft spot. 20 minutes later, we get the rally and we're gonna start pushing. And I'm like, wonder why this spot was so soft. Well, I stand up and I had sat on a curled up rattlesnake.
Oh
I'd,
my.
yeah, I'd sat on the rattlesnake's head, and it was cold out and he couldn't move. And that was my soft spot. So as I get up, it's resetting its jaw, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm tired of this near death experience stuff. And it was a big one. It was a big one.
When was this?
Honestly, I think it was Joe was our OIC, so it had to be our second platoon.
That's insane.
Yeah, sat right on, and then I told the instructor staff, I was like, "Hey, check out what I was just sitting on for the last 30 minutes." And like a bunch of little kids that run over and they start beating with the stick and stuff. But yeah, it was I sat right on a coiled up rattlesnake.
My Lord, I remember I crawled up on one at sniper school and at Nyland. And so I crawl doing the low crawl thing or doing stalking. And I remember like looking over, not very far away, and there was a rattlesnake. But I remember it was on a rock and it was almost the exact same color as that rock. There was like
Mm.
some of those rocks had like a pinkish tint to them.
Yeah.
So this
Yep.
rattlesnake stands out to me to this day. And I just kind of backed up a little bit and kept going. But no joke right there. So where were you on September 11th? You were
We
deployed.
were in Okinawa, and we were in the barracks, and I think it was in the evening.
It was
The
late.
Yeah, and we're all in Salty's room, and TV's on, and we see the tower number one, or first tower, was on fire, and we're like, not a whole lot of information. It was just the tower was on fire, and then we see the plane hit the second one, and then the phone started ringing, and we're just like, yeah, we just got hit, terrorist attack. Didn't know any information, but they said, um, stand by, and we were with the battle group, so we packed up all our stuff, got on the USS Germantown, and the full battle group, Marines, amphibious aircraft, all our amphibious ships, and we just started steaming south to Jakarta because the embassy down there was threatening to get overrun. So that was going to be the first op. So we were prepping for doing MEO at the embassy in Jakarta, and it was mayhem. Like, I mean, the logistically speaking, just how fast we got the go ahead and how fast all the assets were up and moving, bodies were where they were supposed to be, and we got underway. And I was like, okay, well, this is getting real. And I remember thinking, I was like, well, man, I hope that our training, as hard as it is prepping us for what's next. And so we just practiced and practiced and rehearsed, and nothing happened in that instance. And then um, came home, and I was like, you know what, I think it's time for me to go to OCS. And you had already gone to OCS,
I was getting ready to go. So
getting
I
ready to go.
yes to it before that deployment. And so I knew I would be going after we got back from that
Yeah,
deployment.
and
Very similar experience though to you. Guam,
yeah,
like I think it was maybe a little later there. And same thing. Phone started ringing, went down to the basement of the barracks where there was the TV and watched the Twin Towers fall, and then ended up going doing the shipboarding operations out of Kuwait for the rest of that deployment, which was interesting. But yeah, I came back, did a little thing to another country, which was a really cool experience as well. While I was waiting, because I was like, this wasn't gonna go into another platoon because I had this OCS date in October, so I was kind of in
mhm.
for a little bit. So I got to kind of like a free agent. So I got to go do a little something overseas, and then came back and then took leave, and then went right to OCS. So I got to OCS in 2002 October, I think. And so you decided when you got, like, right when you got back or during that deployment, or when
So
you,
during that deployment, so I was like, you know what, I think it's time. So I found out that they changed the age waiver, and I was a couple hours short of getting my degree. So on deployment, I started clepping classes, and I'd really decided to get my degree because I had flunked out of college the first time. Um, so I was like, you know what, it's time. And all the stars seemed to align. So I was like, I just got to take this opportunity. So I applied for OCS, and our CO at the time, Morgan, said, "Hey, you got to go. I mean, you got to go as high as you can go to get a letter of recommendation." It's like, my CO's recommendation is not going to be good enough. So we're at Woody's house at 4th of July party, and this gentleman named Dean Laird was there, and he's the only fighter ace in the Pacific theater and European theater, and just rock star. And so I go up to Mr. Laird and said, "Hey, sir, I'm trying to go to OCS and I need a great letter of recommendation." And he said, "Oh, son, I'm not really good at writing that stuff." It's like, "But my best friend is great at it." And his best friend happened to be James Stockdale.
wow, you got a letter of recommendation from Stockdale?
Yeah, yeah. So I talked to Mr. Laird, and he said, "Hey, got you an appointment with Jim." He called him Jimmy, and he said, "Show up Saturday, 9 a.m. In your whites, and I'll be over there as soon as I can." So I knock on the door, and
Oh, the exact house. I mean, we lived like 2 blocks from him.
yeah, and I was just in San Diego, and I took a picture of the house.
Still there, exact
Yeah,
same.
so I go into the house. Jack, he was the nicest guy, and he walked me around the house, and he just told me some stories, and um 4 hours with Admiral Stockdale. And first thing I said was like, "Hey, sir, just so you know, flunked out of college." He said, he stopped me. He's like, "Nope, I don't even want to hear it. I'm looking through your record. You're good. Who cares about college? Your peers said that you're ready for this position, and I'm going to interview you. And if you're good, we're going to get you a letter of recommendation." So we hang out for 4 hours. I go home excited. And then the next day, 9 in the morning, 8 or 9 in the morning, get a call and said, "Son, where are you?" And I was like, "Sir, I'm on my way." He had forgotten our interview. So I got dressed back up, went over to A Avenue, and had the same interview with him second time.
No way.
Yeah, he was great both times. And he wrote a handwritten letter of recommendation,
No,
that I still have from Admiral Stockdale.
that's amazing.
And he went to Warcom finally because I'd call him and said, "Sir, just checking in." He's like, "When's your OCS class?" And I was like, "Sir, they haven't reviewed it yet." He's like, he hangs up the phone, and he showed up quarter deck of Warcom, you know, Admiral with Medal of Honor. You know, you have to pipe the man on board. I mean, there's protocols, right? So I guess they were just like in the movies, man. Just papers were flying everywhere, bodies were going everywhere. Like, why didn't anybody tell me Stockdale's coming? And he walks in, and is like, "Who do I got to screw around here to get petty officer green and OCS?"
Wow.
Yeah. So RCO's like, or somebody's like, "Who the hell is Petty Officer Green?" They're like, "I don't know, man. Just you know." The admiral said we got to get him in, so he ended up writing me a handwritten letter, uh, and that was my OCS letter.
No kidding.
He
That
was fantastic, Jack. I mean, wealth of knowledge, and for all he had been through, I think he was one of the kindest people I'd ever met. Just an absolute kind human. And so I told him, I was like, "Hey, sir, I got an OCS." He's like, "All right, yeah, one more mission for you." Like, "Yes, sir. What you got?" He's like, "When you um, go meet Johnny, you let him know that we're friends. You tell Johnny that you hang with big boys now, and he'll know exactly what you're talking about." And I was like, "Great, sir. Who's Johnny?" "Johnny McCain. You tell that Johnny McCain that you're on with the big boys now." And I could never get on the senator's calendar before he passed. But yeah, so that's my OCS story. And then you and I met again, '04. You had we were you were doing the turnover, and you had just gotten back from working in Najaf. It was, I think it was.
no six. So no,
Uh,
yeah,
because you were,
that's
yeah, because you were under Tim as your CO at two,
yeah,
and you and I did the turnover, and you had, our careers strangely mirrored each other's. Right, you were a couple years ahead of me, so
yeah.
you gave me the turnover and said,
That's right. I remember right that in the Baghdad at the palace.
"Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
I remember. Yeah. Oh man, that was wild.
yeah,
Crazy time. Go back to Stockdale. I cannot believe all those years. You don't, for whatever reason, I don't know why, out of respect or whatever. Like, why didn't I just go knock on his door one day? Or I saw that car. What was it like? It was like the Oldsmobile Buick driving around
yeah, yes,
Coronado, at like 2 miles an hour with like it had the Medal of Honor on the license plate, I think. And I can't remember.
yeah, yep,
Your license plate might have been another personalized thing on there. I can't remember right now, but you knew the car,
hmm
so you'd know the car driving around, and I knew the house. But I mean, I don't know why. Why didn't I just go up and
no,
s- yeah. Oh,
yeah.
man.
So it was. I mean, it was one of the highlights because not knowing who. I mean, you heard about him. You go to SEER school and
Yeah, yeah, right there on the building.
yeah, you read about him, and then all of a sudden, like, "Hey, I got you an interview with Admiral Stockdale." I was like, "Wait a second, I'm not ready, I don't think." But he was just gracious and kind, and like, "You can do great things, young man."
Oh, that's great. I kind of did the opposite for mine. I remember thinking like, geez, I don't know any senior ranking people. Because I remember people saying, hey, get the highest ranking person you can, all this sort of
Mhm.
thing, make a difference on the board or whatever. And I remember thinking like, well, I don't know anybody. I know my CO and XO, that's fine. And maybe group, commander, maybe I forget. But I was like, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to get recommendations from my chiefs and LPOs, because maybe somebody on that board will look at that and say, oh, this is someone who really knows this person. So I got my LPOs to write, ask them, and they did, and my chiefs as well. And so I put those in the packet. So four or
Hmm.
maybe five from E6s and E7s in there, maybe one E8, but I don't think so. I think it was just chiefs. So I put my packet like that and just hope for the best. So I did the opposite. And I was like, well, maybe this will speak to somebody on that thing, because maybe it'll be different than other people. And, I'm like, oh, if somebody knows an admiral, like, what does this admiral know about this E4? Like, really? This admiral's like jumping out of planes with them and diving with them and going into combat with them or whatever. No, they're just like, got asked to write this thing. And I thought maybe somebody on that board would be like, okay, Admiral. Oh, wait a sec. E6. This is different.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if it helped or not. So for anybody listening, maybe don't take that advice. It might not be, the best advice, but that's what I did anyway. So, and it's ended up working out for for better or for worse. I think it was the right path for me, and having been prior enlisted, being able to get thrown right into the fight, especially with the CO that you mentioned that we had at
Mhm.
SEAL Team 2, it just kicked me right into the fight as soon as I got there. So I was over in Afghanistan fairly quickly, which was, for the time, it was so beneficial. The guys that I went
Yeah,
with over
yeah.
there, back to Team 2 to then take to Iraq. So it worked out. I think as good as it could have. But yeah, it's nice to be out now though. It is. I can't imagine being in now, how different it is in such a short period of time.
Mhm.
Thinking about things like social media, which I never had. Even when it came out, I was like, "What?" I remember when MySpace came out. Like the guys in my platoon in 2000, let's say three, maybe,
Yeah.
were like, "Oh, what the hell?" And then later on Facebook and then Instagram, like, "What the?" I'm never going to do that. Of course,
Now here we are.
now every day. But being in, what a different experience that would be, I think, now, and all the different political pressures and the things that you're constantly hearing, not just if you decide to turn on your television, but that you're getting fed on this device you're walking around with. You're being fed these things because obviously whoever's feeding them is trying to manipulate thoughts, behavior.
Mhm.
Things aren't popping up there just randomly for you to see. So it's very interesting to think about all that right now. I'm glad to be on the outside at this point looking at it. Like we got very lucky the time frame that we were in to have that tiny bit of experience before September 11th, and then
Yeah.
bang, September 11th, and then we're in it, and then bam, full on sprint for a decade or whatever it was, and then transition out.
Yeah.
So what did you so you did your OIC? What else when after that, after OCS? And
Okay, so you and I had
what
talked.
did you do?
You talked to me before I was just, you're like, dude, just endure it. Just endure
I
it.
really do put it in a place where I never think about it.
Yeah, yeah. You told me
I
this.
love you bring it up. I never think about
Yeah.
it.
So I went to OCS, showed up at team. Okay, so I think I hit all the SEAL teams within 24 hours. So I had orders to team 10, and then team ten's like, hey, nice to meet you. Um, Go over to team two. Team two said, um, yeah, yeah, he's right here. Go over to, no, you're actually assigned to team four. So go on over to team four. There was some paperwork that was wrong. So I'm talking with ops at team four. He gets a phone call and says, hey, they're having a conversation. He's like, well, yeah, he's right here. He's like, well, send him on over. And then I was assigned to team eight. I was TAD to team eight from team four,
Yeah.
and did a great platoon with those guys. Um, and
And that was
then
when we turned over in Iraq.
Yeah, that's where we turned over. Yeah. And then finished that, went to boat team 20 because I was junior. I couldn't get an AOIC at the back of the team. So I did my OIC tour at 20. Fantastic. I mean, those guys, um, being a boat guys, maintaining those boats is hard, and we worked hand in hand with them at September 11th. So I had nothing but a great experience and had an amazing experience at the command. And then I was even more junior. So talked to Margaret and decided I wanted to get a master's. So I went to apply for Naval Postgraduate School, and I wanted to take the low intensity conflict course that is basically, hey, take a break. You've been going at it for a while. So I did that for, I was planning on doing that and talked to Margaret, and she said, oh, I'm going to send you to get your MBA. I'm like, whoa, 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 no, no, you're not. And she's like, you have all those damn kids, and I'll be damned if you're not going to have a good job when you get out of here. So here you go. And it was, Jack, it was,
Oh, was it at Naval Postgrad School through?
yeah, yeah. And I just showed up and learned. I mean, I was a criminology, sociology major, and all of a sudden I'm learning business at the graduate level and just getting abused, right? But then I figured it out. The garbage in, garbage out portion for the first part, I was not great at, but I kept my head above water. But then we did the analytics part where you just take case studies and just think through the problem, and learned a lot, and took that and got us to talk to Margaret at the end and said, hey, I want to go to teammate to do my OIC. She's like, done. And was assigned a teammate, had another amazing platoon. And after that, knew I had some things I needed to work on. So I was like, you know what? There's some gaps I need to fill. So I want to go do an ops tour. So I did ops tour back at 20, and then did SOC Knew that, I was going to be more marketable at 44 than 24, and I was coming up on 20 years, and ended up my career at group 4 and got all the surgeries I needed and went to NICO. And then I found out how, because Jack, for some reason, I didn't understand uh, traumatic brain injury or PTS and stuff. So play football in college. Back then, it was getting your bell rung, right? And then my first school at Team 5 was the SWS course, which was basically breacher course.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So then blast propagated head trauma. Had no idea. So went to NICO, got my screenings back, and like, so you have two different types. So you have impact types, but then you also have blast types. And um, and I couldn't learn new stuff. For some reason, the new stuff I just couldn't pick up. Like when we were going through the platoons and workups and stuff, we were just refining what we had already learned early on. New tactics would come in and we could incorporate them really quickly, but I wasn't as sharp as I was. The information was in there, I just couldn't get to it. And so retired and was going to join the FBI, but I was going to because it was easy button. I knew the systems, but this gentleman out in New York, we went to a fundraiser, and this gentleman said, "Oh, I met this gentleman at the fundraiser, and he said, well, son, what are you going to do after you retire?" And I was like, "I have no idea. I'm terrified. I have no idea what I'm even good at." And he said, "Absolutely not." He's like, "Here's my card. Come out to LA. We're going to foot the bill and we're going to figure out what's next for you because you can't be a Navy SEAL officer, got your MBA, and the first time somebody asks you what you're going to do, you're terrified." So I looked at that business card for about a month and finally said, "You know what? I'm going to give this guy a call." Gave him a call, went out to LA, and he was just fantastic. And so we were out there meeting his staff and his buddies. And Wednesday, he and I finally sit down and talk. He's like, "Mark, you had a great resume, but I'd be doing you a disservice if I put you in my company. But we're gonna send you home. But if you want a job here, you have one. You're part of the family now." He's like, "But I have to go to USC tomorrow. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I want to go to USC." And he had known that I'd be a good fit at USC. So we get out of the car and it's graduation week and it's pandemonium. Students are everywhere, parents are, I mean, it's really a party there. So I take 2 steps out of the car and said, "Bill, this would be such a great place to work." And he didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. We had lunch, did a tour of USC, fly back home. 2 weeks later, he called and said, "Everything we talked about 2 weeks ago, forget about it. I got you 4 interviews at USC."
No way.
And I said, "Okay, what am I going to be interviewing for?" He's like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. Just don't suck." Yeah, hung up the phone. So I go out and interview, and turns out he's a trustee at USC. And he said, "He's my guy. Give him some interviews. If he's not good, then no harm, no foul." So I had 4 interviews and got 3 job offers. And as you're transitioning, I realized that after you're out, you're more tolerated but not welcome anymore by the team guys. Yeah, and not from any fault of theirs. It's just they're still in it.
Gotcha.
They're still, yeah. So they're still in it, and you want to like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" And bird spinning, they got to go. So I realized I was like, I'm not going to recreate that locker room ever again. So I got to USC and took the job, and it was just fantastic. But on the flip side of it, that's when the transition started. That's when the invisible injury started, and I have to learn something new. And I realized I used to be able to do sniper calculations like that, or stuff with the job. I could do it really, really quickly. But learning new stuff, I was like, I can't get it. So I was at the perfect spot as Research University, and I told them what the problem was, and like, "Well, have you tried this?" Like, "Well, we're sponsoring a study. Go over here." And finally, we got something that stuck. But from the time I retired to the time I really figured out transition and what I was going through, It took about 4 years,
Huh.
and by the time I moved back, I was pretty good. But in the meantime, unfortunately, I'd gone through a divorce, and I wasn't quite good at any one thing. I moved to LA, weird place, new city, new job. Um, wasn't keeping my family together. I just wasn't good at any one thing anymore. And what do team guys do when you're struggling? You pile more stuff on. So I said, I have a great idea. I'm going to go to grad school. So I applied for grad school. And then there was one more thing I wasn't good at because I hadn't been to school since 2009, graduated 2009. This was 2017 is when I started. And I just wasn't good at that either. And, with everything that was going on, it crept up as like, what if everybody in life would be better if I just wasn't around anymore? I just felt like I was a burden. It was just, Jack, it was just for a second, right? But it crept in there. And this wonderful friend of mine called up and said, "Hey, are you all right?" I'm like, "Nope." And I was like, "I need you to do me a favor. Come over to the house. I'm going through a rough patch. Got guns in the house. We just take the guns out of the house for the day." And she was 30 minutes away. Lived in Hollywood. I got out of the house, took a 30-minute walk. Coming back to the apartment, she's pulling in, gives me a big hug, and says, "Hey, you're good. You're gonna be all right. We care about you, and you're just going through a rough patch." Hand her the guns, and she took off. 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, slept on it. Next day, I was like, okay, it was a reset. But had I not had that support system, I don't know. I can't definitively say I would have made it. And it's just because I really just felt like not being not having a tribe anymore. And it's 20 years of your life doing team guy stuff with amazing humans, doing this very difficult job. Even though we're complaining a lot, we love it, and we love the community, and we love the camaraderie, and we love the training, and we love how challenging it is. And I missed it much more than I ever thought I would. And all those things piling on, it really just came to a head. And I'm just like, man, I feel like I'm a burden. And I was like, yeah, I need some help. I can't get there on my own. And my friend coming over that night was the catalyst that really just started the healing process. So here I am today, you know, talking to a great friend after 25 years, and um, wanted to share that story of people who are struggling. And that's what I really wrote the book about. Was I've lost so many friends taking their own lives, more so than combat. And I was just like, well, I just want somebody to read this book and say, hey, I've been through that as an athlete, or I've been through that in the military, or I've been through a divorce. I've lost a friend. I've lost a family member. I'm going to be professional at something other than what I put these thousands of hours towards. And I got that perspective on from working with athletes. Kind of similar thing. Thousands of hours of prepping, doing this job they love, and then want to get drafted to the NFL or at the next level. Call never comes, so now they have to be a professional at something else, and they also transition, and it's really challenging. And I had all those touch points of really just telling the story. And a gentleman at Pivotal Moments asked me if I was going to tell my story, and I was like, so many more team guys have much more interesting stories. And he heard me speak at USC one time, and he's like, "All right, I'm sick of you. Here's your 4 ghostwriters. Pick one. You're funded for a book. Go." I was like, okay. And the result of that was Unsealed. And I really hope it touches not only the service member, but perhaps the family member. A wife sees that their husband's going through something, or their spouse is going through something. The kids say, hey, dad, why don't you read this story? Because seems to be what you're going through. And it's like no holds barred. It's good, bad, and ugly. And this is just my experience. And I hope it resonates to a point where you can say, Yeah, I might need some help getting through this rough patch.
Yeah, because I read it and I'm like, gosh, I've known the Mark since 1997. I'm learning all this stuff from before SEAL teams.
Yeah.
And then after. So yeah, it's a powerful book, and I know it's going to help people, no doubt about it. What did you do after your friend came over that day and took the weapons out of the house? What was your next step? Like, what did you do to get that help that you needed?
I had this notebook that was been sitting, and I just started what's called a gratitude log. And I just took it hours of just writing everything I was grateful for. And I thought it was just gonna be a couple things, and it's just like 2 pages of stuff that I was grateful for. And I was like, "Well, I can't leave all this behind."
Oh
And
wow.
so from then on, I just started a gratitude log because I just wanted my day to start off with things I was grateful for. And that was the thing. I was that dusty old red book. Like, it just said gratitude log on it, and I just wrote until I couldn't find anything else I was grateful for, and it was 2 pages of just grateful.
Oh wow. That's amazing. I think that in and of itself can help a lot of people. What a great way to start a day, to start with an affirmation like that of the things that you're grateful for. Because
Uh-huh. So I would ride the train, arrive at on campus, and I would sit in the sunlight, and I would just start the day off just, "Hey, this is what I'm grateful for." And that mindset just made the whole day better. And then I maintain routines, right? I went to the gym every day. I stopped what I was doing. I would go work out with the athletes, every day at lunch, and I just got into a routine where I was kind of on autopilot. So I could slowly process what I was going through, get into a routine. I'm an introvert by nature, so I really process really well by myself. I had that alone time, and then it just one day turned into 1 year, which turned into 2 years, and years later, and I think that's the catalyst for it. Just
Mm.
that gratitude log, and I still maintain it.
Oh, wow. Other than that, how do you deal with post traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury? And can they tell, like, hey, we think you got this from the teams, or hey, this you compounded on what you did in football here. I mean, it can't be great to go from football into the teams and have all these breaches go off, and IEDs go off, and all the rest of it. Shooting that 50,
Yeah,
is it like a
with
number we're
Tommy.
supposed to shoot, right? We're
Yeah,
supposed to like only do a certain amount, but no one cared about that back
right.
then. Like, remember we had to get rid of 50 ammo, so we would just shoot the 50 ammo until
Yeah.
it expended. And then same thing with like AT4s
Or
and
yeah.
rockets and Carl Gustavs. There's like a number. I don't think they let you shoot more than a few each day or whatever it was. And then the instructors, remember them? They had to
Yeah.
sit. And when we went through, a lot of them just did this.
Yeah, I know.
Photos of instructors doing this for like multiple iterations of us going through the procedures, doing it once, and then going like La Rocket stage, AT4 stage, Carl Gustav stage, or whatever that was in SEAL qualification training even. And it was very similar during the workups, I think. But you had those instructors just do this every time. They're standing there for like 50 people.
Or the brass and the the
Oh,
brass.
fast in the ears. Or the chief had one that wanted us to get used to being in a firefight without ear pro. This is
Right.
September 11th.
Uh-huh.
So that's crazy. And I'm
Yep.
next to the comm guy. I'm next to the 60. I'm next to the 8 up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. And so you're on the ground and you're shooting your M4, and there you got the 8 ups going over here,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, what? Without ear pro to get used to it?
Yeah. I mean, what else are you gonna do, Jack? You gotta get used to it.
Crazy. I mean,
Yeah. So
and then very soon thereafter, we got headsets and emitters and all the rest of it, which noise canceling headsets and
yeah,
all.
some doctor came in and said, "Hey, you guys can't actually do this because you're
Oh
hurting
my
these guys."
goodness. And what most people don't know is you put that brass in, or you take just the foamies and put them in. Well, the bone around your ear right here is taking that vibration also, and the sound's getting in there, not just through little gaps of like air, but it's coming in or through the bone here as well, just like listening through a door that you're hearing.
Right, right.
You're getting it through there too. So having the foamy, and so now when I shoot now, I put foamies and then I have my noise canceling headsets over
Mm.
just to protect those sides of the head, because I've been, just too much. And even if we're shooting suppressed, I still do it.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean that was the start, and then I just looked at different modalities on, hey, what works for um, just head trauma, and there wasn't a lot out there, so um, I did what's called EMDR, um, and basically that's a trauma therapy, um, and that worked for me because I didn't want to get medicated.
What is it?
So basically, it's your and I'm gonna butcher this, but basically it's stimulating the right and left side of your body, and it brings up a memory, and instead of it just sitting in your amygdala, reliving the trauma, and you feel it throughout your body and you're reliving it. So really it just takes it out of that fight or flight mode, and then it just puts it into a folder, and now it's just a memory.
Hmm.
And it's not like you're not reliving it again. It's like, and they start off with like, hey, when's what was a thing that happened? It was like, oh, my dog died. So we just started off with, how'd you feel about your dog dying? They put you through the protocol, and you move through that emotion, or that whatever's sitting in there causing that fight or flight to trigger. And I just had this great therapist named Robert Andrews. He's out of Houston, and he was the first one that started. And we were in San Diego. He said, "You look like you'd be a good candidate. I work with high performers, and let's just try it." So I did, and he was fantastic, and that really started it. And then, I had a shoulder surgery, and said, "Hey, doc, I don't really want to be on medication." He's like, "Well, just do yoga. Yoga is better than meds anyway." So gratitude log, stand into a routine, did the EMDR and do yoga, and it's manageable. The last thing I have to work through is sleep. I'm still not sleeping well,
Yeah.
and as soon as I cross that threshold, then I'll be good, I think.
Sorry, I smiled just because I was thinking about how late I was up last night. Mine's not asleep just because I can't go to sleep. It's because I'm just going too late and getting up too early. But that's
Yeah. So yeah, Jack, that was my journey, and I really hope to reach a lot of people, and start off on the micro level of the service member, but then hopefully as book picks up steam and it reaches business people or parents or athletes, just the whole gamut of transitions, because we're all transitioning at some point. And I just added a bunch of stories, that some good, some bad, some ugly, and you know becoming a parent was a transition which I wasn't ready for. um, Losing a parent, that was one. So I just compiled them all and put some texture to it, because my editor said, "This is a great story, but you're talking at your audience, you're not talking to your audience." So she said, "You need to add some texture to it." So that's when I had to dive deep and not do academic writing, but it's like, hey, here's how I felt as I was walking through New York City going to that event, or walking down the hallway when my dad had lost his leg, and all that, or how you felt on your near death experiences. So um, hadn't dived that deep into it. And the first story I started off with was the one with Michael, and it was a tough one.
yeah, that's emotional one to read. And what are you doing? What are you doing now? Book comes, it'll be out when this podcast drops. So it's out January 22nd, I believe,
Yes.
Unsealed. Anywhere books are sold. They can go to themarkgreen with an E.com to find out what you got going on there. But so what are you doing? What are you doing right now? What's your main focus now professionally?
So I think hopefully it's gonna be the quiet before the storm. And I don't know why, Jack, but I'm so grateful for the people that took the time and purchased the book pre-sale. I mean, I want to have events where I'm just meeting people who are supportive, and signing their book and shaking hands, and you know, uh, that's what I hope to do. I just want to get some book tours going, and just meet the people who were supportive. And took the time to read the book and watch these podcasts and get to know me as a person. And so that's what's next.
Man, well, that's the best part, because I try to use social media that way. I try to thank as many people as I possibly can on
Mhm.
to reach out and say that they read the book, listened to the book, watched the podcast, listened to the podcast, watched the show on Amazon Prime, whatever. So I try to thank as many people as I possibly can. But at book signings, that's the place where you can really shake hands, look them in the eye, and really,
Yeah.
because it's they're trusting you with that time that they're never going to get back, and there's a large responsibility there, but there's a connection there as well. So I love doing that, and being able to really say thank you in person to people, because it's a different experience in person. But I do love that there is social media, because I can use it that way. The bad
Yeah.
part obviously is, you see when you're trying to say thank you to people, you see all the crazy things also, which maybe isn't the most
Yeah.
but I still, I try to, not let those take up too much bandwidth, and still, say thank as many people as I can on those channels.
But I have to thank you for one, because you sent me a book of the Terminal List and you wrote this personal mark. It's great to serve with you. And so I signed 151 books, and each person I knew, I wrote something like, "Hey, here's a memory that connects you and I." And it's not just, "Hey, thank you for the book," and just signing it. It's like, "Hey, remember when we met in high school, walking Spinning Hills High School or middle school," or just some memory that ties us together. And I took that from you and I had known each other for a long time, but I opened up the book and it's like Jack wrote me a personal note. And so I'm learning a lot. But man, I'm just grateful for you, man. So we've known each other for quite some time, and every time I've watched the Terminal List a bunch of times, and every time I see Jack Carr up there, I'm like, but then I cry. I almost cry. I was like, oh, Jack died. But
The character I was playing, and I had to episode 3 near the beginning, and I had to tell Chris, so like, hey, just so you know, in real life, this would go down a little bit differently. All right.
yeah, I was like, you need to be. I was like, I know Jack would not miss that shot.
No, this would go down a little differently in real life. But they wouldn't let me do the car crash. And I
Yeah,
thought, it's no big deal. I'm a, Navy SEAL, I can do that. And then I saw it on film, and I think I couldn't do it because of the stuntmen. Anyway, couldn't do it. But the guy who doubled me doubled Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon, getting handcuffed to the business guy, and he's got
yeah,
a legendary stuntman named Mick Rogers, awesome guy. So he doubled me for that. So they do the car crash, and then he gets out, and I get in. But when I saw them do the car crash in person, I was like, oh, because it just looks like a fender bender on screen. I think
uh-huh.
too. It was a hard hit,
Was
and
it really? Okay.
okay, maybe I'm glad that. So then I got in the car and then got to do the shootout stuff, and you have glasses on, so there's glass breaking because they have these little little mortar tubes essentially that are under the dash that you can't see on camera, and so it's
Yeah.
shooting in and I'm shooting out. There's somebody pressing a button on like an iPad type thing off
Okay.
camera. It's shooting these little ball bearings into the glass, so it looks like bullet holes.
Huh.
But glass fragments from that, and then had a squib in the headrest. So I'm doing the shootout, and then when Chris comes around and shoots me in the head, then I throw my head to the side, and they hit the squib, and it's in the headrest, and he shoots the blood all over the place. So.
Heartbroken the first time I saw that. I was
Oh
like,
man, thank you. I appreciate it. But, it's all made up. All made up, and yeah, in real life, yeah, it's going down differently. Oh, Chris Pratt.
yeah. Oh man. So when we met Chris for the first time, he was the nicest guy. He was so gracious with his time, and I noticed a picture that you posted of that night
Yeah.
that somebody was cut out of that picture.
Well, I think two people were, because Jared's in there too. I think. Were you on the other side?
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm not in the picture.
Oh man, I have to go back and find the original then.
Oh, I'll send it to you. I'll
Nice.
send it to you.
Nice. I'll now that you're public, I think I usually try to cut people out that aren't like public sometimes, or I'm not
Yeah.
sure, something like that. But yeah, I'll repost with you in there now that Unsealed is out there, available everywhere books are sold, and talk about that in the caption, because that was a really cool night. What was really interesting also is that's a cool. I won't say where it was because it's kind of off the beaten path. It's kind of like
Yeah.
one of our favorite spots in LA, because it's not like an LA scene type place. It's kind of like old school Hollywood almost.
That's cool. It's a cool place.
Yeah. Paparazzi still got him coming out that night.
They did?
him and Jared, because they left, and then we stayed and kept partaking in the festivities. But when he left, it was in like People Magazine or People Online or something the next day. So they just have these, they have Intel networks set up all around, LA, probably New York as well. And so they have somebody, it doesn't matter, it could be anybody that's working there that just sends a little text probably and says, hey, Chris Pratt's here. He's about to leave or whatever. And then there's somebody outside. Probably they, give them a little money and blah, blah, blah. And it's an ecosystem, but it's a really interesting one. Because even he still got caught by the paparazzi coming out of there.
Yeah, but he was such a gracious guy, and I was really surprised, at that level. And he just sat and was gracious and told great stories. And then he took a picture with me as Star-Lord, basically. And I think I posted on something that if you're not a fan of this guy, you become a fan, because it doesn't get a whole lot better than Chris. So
yeah. No, absolutely. We're on these calls casting for the next season of the show. So we have people reading, and we're on the screen and he's reading with them, and just so gracious, so kind, so smart, and just a genuinely good human being.
Yeah. Yeah. And that whole, it was memorable, because the reconnect with you, and then all of a sudden look over and it's actually Chris. Sneaky tall, by the way.
He's tall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, we're not short. You're taller than I am, but yeah, he's a tall guy.
Yeah.
Big, strong guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So
such a good dude. Oh man. Well, hopefully we can do it again one of these days soon. Link up in person. Hopefully you pass through Park City or Salt Lake on one of these book tours, and we can link up here or on the road or LA or wherever.
Happy to do it anytime.
Man, awesome. So once again, themarkgreen.com, and that's with an E at the end of green, unsealed out there now. And what's the Instagram?
The Mark Green. So we have this social media person. Her name is Lexi. If you like the posts, I did them. If you don't like the posts, Lexi did them.
Come on now.
No, she's great. She's been spearheading the whole social media thing, and I wasn't comfortable with it, but she said, hey, she consolidated all the names, and she's just been driving the train, and she's just fantastic. So it's a new world right now.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to get comfortable with, especially if you're more private, which I know you are and I am as well. It might not seem like it at this stage, but it's for me. I realized that, okay, stepping into this new realm, and you want to do the things that you've always dreamed of doing, and now it's 2020. It's 21st century, not the 20th century. Then you're going to have to embrace these different platforms, and we're to connect with an audience and hopefully grow a readership, and hopefully provide value by doing so, and not just make asks, but really, and not just share a journey, though that's part of it. But it's, for me, I think about adding value to somebody's life, whether it's a single Instagram post or it's this podcast, any sentence in the book, any line in the series. So any of those things, they have to add value to someone's life because of that time that we talked about, because they're trusting me with time they're never going to get back. So I never flippantly post anything. I really think it through and ask myself, hey, if someone's trusting me with their time and they're scrolling through and they see this and they take the time to read it, have I added value to their life through time they're never going to get back? And so it's something I put a lot of thought into, but hey, it is a different world for sure.
Yeah.
All the adaptation, just like warfare, just like the battlefields, adaptation, and who adapts faster than the enemy.
So, Jack, if you don't mind, I'm going to purchase some of the axes and put a memorial of the axes in my office.
Oh man, no way!
Oh, of course I am. Absolutely. Yeah. So just if you see podcasts with that coming up, just know that you've been an inspiration for quite some time, and the least I could do is one, thank you, and just continuously thank you, and just represent our friendship, and it's incredibly valuable, and I really thank you for everything you've done.
Absolutely. No, it's been incredible knowing you from the earliest days of Buds all the way through today. So looking forward to the road ahead. And man, congratulations on everything. Thank you for your time in uniform and for sharing this story and Unsealed with everyone, because I think it is going to help a ton of people, because everyone's going to go through everyone's going to get knocked down. Everyone's going to go through transition. And reading this story, you never know how many people, you'll never know how many
Right.
people. That's kind of the bottom line with it. So, so thanks for taking the time today.
Absolutely.
And to everybody else out there, themarkgreen.com. Check out the book. You can follow me on the social channels at Jack Carr USA, officialjackcarr.com. That is the website. Click on shop in the upper right-hand corner for the merch. And until the next time, take care out there. Stay safe, be strong, keep fighting. Later, brother.
See you, Jack.
You think you know James Reese? Think again. Red Sky Morning available May 14th in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. Everywhere books are sold. Will there be blood? Count on it.